Hi, I'm Jason Hudson from Tenzig Technology, and today we'll be showing you how to create a multi-app kiosk custom shell for your Tenzig Windows 11 IoT LTSC thin clients. Creating custom shells gives you the ability to launch your user's desktop to deliver single or multiple applications at login, so that your end users only get access to what they need and nothing more. It also gives your system engineers and administrators a more controlled and secure desktop environment to set up and manage, and is quite easy to maintain if you need to change the applications your users need access to in the future. We'll be using Microsoft Intune to do this and take you step by step through the process required to build an AssignedAccess configuration inside an XML file that will then deploy to our Tenzig Windows 11 IoT device from within a custom configuration policy. We're going to create two applications inside the multi-app kiosk by adding the Chrome browser as a Win32 app and also the recently introduced Windows app as a UWP application, otherwise known as Universal Windows Platform. Just a few words about the Windows app before we continue. Windows app is your gateway to Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows 365, Microsoft DevBox, remote desktop services, and remote PCs, securely connecting you to Windows devices and apps. We'll give you a demo of the Windows app later on after we've shown you how to build the kiosk. Also, as part of this video, we'll show you how to build the Windows app into an Intune app that will deploy to our device in advance of the AssignedAccess configuration content. You might also remember that we released the previous video back in 2023 that focused on creating a Windows 10 IoT multi-app kiosk. So we'll provide a link to that video in the description below. Before we continue with the demonstration, it's just worth mentioning to keep a lookout for any new Windows 11 IoT LTSC feature updates for your Windows thin clients. We say this because Microsoft may introduce enhancements to kiosk functionality over time, and it's a good idea to be able to take advantage of them as and when they're released. Before we continue, please just take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the Tenzig YouTube channel. Your support enables us to reach a wider audience and continue providing valuable information to the tech community. Just before we start to build the multi-app kiosk configuration policy, let's just take a look around the Intune environment and see what areas we'll be working with. In your web browser address bar, if you navigate to intune.microsoft.com, you'll be taken to the Intune homepage. And if we click on Devices, then you'll see several platforms that your devices are grouped under. You can either click on these platform types or you can just click All Devices on the left, and you'll see a complete list of all your devices, whatever their platform. If you click on the Configuration menu option under Manage Devices, then this is where you'll eventually create your multi-app kiosk configuration policy and load in the XML content that we'll be creating a bit later on. If you click on Apps in the top left menu, then All Apps, this is where you'll create any Intune apps that you want to deploy to your endpoints. This is where we'll show you how to create an Intune app that will bundle up and deploy the Windows app that we talked about earlier. In this section, we'll show you how to create an Intune application that will deploy the Windows app to our Tenzig Windows 11 IoT device. We need to deploy the Windows app to the endpoint first, so that we can point to it from within the AssignedAccess Config XML a bit later on. Let's start by clicking on Apps, and then All Apps. Click the Add button, and then in the right-hand window under App Type, click the drop-down menu and select Microsoft Store App in brackets New. And then click Select at the bottom of the screen. Inside the app screen, click the link Search the Microsoft Store App. In the search box, start typing Windows App and you'll see any apps that contain that phrase. Click the one named Windows App and then click Select again. Once the app information dialog appears, I'm going to change the name slightly so it's easier to identify and more specific to what I'm using it for. I'm going to change it to Windows App-Windows 11 IoT LTSC. I'm going to change one more entry on this form. I'm going to change the install behavior from user to system. By doing this, when the application is deployed, it will be made available to all users of the machine and installed for any users that log on to that endpoint device for the first time. We need to do this because during deployment of the multi-app kiosk, Intune creates a new local user called Kiosk User 0. And we want to make sure the Windows app is ready and waiting on the device for the first time automatic logon of Kiosk User 0. Something else to mention before we move on is to make sure that the setting labelled Show this as a featured app in the company portal is set to No. We're only doing this because we just want to target our test devices in this demonstration, and switching it to Yes would make it available for all of our users in our organisation. Once we're happy with this, we need to click Next at the bottom of the screen and Next again, as we don't need to define any scope tags for this deployment. In the Assignments section, I need to select the group of endpoints that our test Tenzig 7011Q device belongs to. You'll notice that there are three types of assignment available to you: Required, Available for enrolled devices, and Uninstall. Available for enrolled devices gives your device users the opportunity to install the apps you are publishing. However, we want to make sure that this particular app is always deployed and installed to the devices we are targeting. So, under the Required heading, click Add Group, and when the search box appears, click into the box and start typing the name of the group to which your devices belong. And the dynamic search will find it for us. Once it appears in the list, tick the box to highlight it, and then click Select at the bottom of the screen. You should now see it in the required list at the top left of the screen. If you click on the included link next to the group name, then some additional app deployment settings are displayed that you can use to further modify the app assignment. One useful feature that you might want to take advantage of is the ability to set the app installation deadline. Currently it's set to as soon as possible, and we're going to leave it like that as we want Intune to deploy it as soon as we've created it. However, if we select the option a specific date and time, then we're given the option to set a specific date and time to deploy this app. You might consider doing this if, for example, your organisation wants an app to be available on a specific go-live date across a particular group of devices out in the field. Now we've assigned the app to the device group, we click Next, and then we're presented with a complete summary of information regarding the app, its installation type and behaviour, and also the app deployment assignments. It's best practice to always double check the settings in this summary screen, because once you click Create, then Intune will start to deploy this app as soon as your devices check in. Just as we're doing in this demonstration, it's also good practice to only prototype and test app deployments on devices that are specific to your test labs, prior to releasing them into the live environment. Let's click Create, and you'll see a couple of status notifications in the top right of the screen, as the app is saved and then created successfully. Once this has happened, you'll be shown a status window with the current deployment state of the application. If you click on Device Install Status, then you can use the refresh button to periodically check on the status for the app deployment. Remember, this might take a few minutes before the endpoint checks in, receives the app deployment, and then reports back with an inventory update. Just be patient, and you should see the deployment was successful. Now that we have our app installed, let's just remote onto the Tenzig Windows 11 IoT device and see where the app sits inside the Start menu. When we're signed in as the administrator of the machine, click on the Start menu, All Programs, and then scroll down and click the Apps list. You can see the recently deployed Windows app inside there. And if we click on it, then we're presented with the welcome message and sign-in box. We'll demonstrate assigning and show you around the Windows app a bit later on, once we've built the multi-app kiosk that will contain the Windows app as part of the Start menu. In this section, we're going to show you how to build the AssignedAccess config file that will upload into an Intune custom configuration policy to create the multi-app kiosk for our Windows 11 IoT devices. We'll be taking a template shell of what a typical XML config would look like, and then build on top of that by adding in our application references. To create or edit your XML file, you can use any text editor for this. I'm going to use Notepad++ to open an XML file that I created earlier, called Windows 11 multi-app kiosk.xml. Before we start to build in the necessary elements for our multi-app kiosk that we'll extract from our Tenzig device, we'll briefly take you through some of the content within this template XML file and explain what certain tags, elements, and attributes mean. At the top of the file, you can see the start of the AssignedAccess Configuration element and several XML and S attributes on that line. These define the namespace schemas that can be used when building the remaining XML elements and their associated attributes under the profile and config elements further down. Let's take a look at the element named Allowed Apps. This is where we'll insert some of the application's specific attributes obtained from the Tenzig device to only allow these apps to be launched as part of the kiosk environment. You can also see a reference to start pins a bit further down. Intune will use this content to define the layout and content of the Start menu on the Windows 11 IoT client, once the configuration policy has been deployed to the endpoint. Lastly, inside the config element, you'll notice an element called Auto Logon Account. By adding this element in, the Intune configuration policy will set the assigned access profile for Kiosk User 0 to auto log on, following a reboot of the Tenzig device. Inside this auto logon element, you can see an attribute called Display Name. This can be changed to suit your own requirements and will be the display name of Kiosk User 0 that is created by the application of the Intune config profile. This will then be used as a more friendly name that is displayed during logon screens and also as the username on the Start menu. We'll modify this attribute at the end of this section, just before we complete and save the AssignedAccess Config XML. Now, because we're creating links to two different app types on the Tenzig Windows 11 device, a Win32 app and a UWP app, we need to obtain some app-specific pieces of information from the device first. These will then feed into the XML file that we are setting up. To do this, just make sure you're logged into the Tenzig Windows 11 Thin Client as a local administrator of the device. Because the Windows app is a UWP application, we're going to need something known as the AUMID, or Application User Model ID, as this is how Windows identifies apps of this type. You can find the AUMID in several different ways on your Windows clients. Using File Explorer to navigate to the Installed Apps folder, getting them from the registry, or using PowerShell to extract them. We'll show you how to do this by using PowerShell, as we'll then be able to copy the AUMID from the command line and paste it directly into our XML file. To open a new PowerShell command window, open the Start menu, click Run, type in PowerShell and press Enter or click OK. Once inside the command window, type in get-start apps and press Enter. And you'll see a complete list of installed applications and their respective AUMIDs under the heading of App ID. If we scroll down to the bottom of the list, you'll see the Windows app that we're looking for and its associated AUMID just to the right of it. For the Win32 app, we need to find the location of the application's executable and also the location of the link file or .lnk file. We'll look at locating the Chrome browser Win32 app .exe and .lnk files on the Tenzig device in just a moment. and focus on setting up the Windows app first. Let's copy that AUMID from the command window on the Tenzig device and then paste it into the template XML file in the locations that are marked inside there. Inside the command window, just highlight the AUMID and then either right-click inside the window or just use Ctrl and C to copy it. Now we're going to move over to the XML file inside the text editor, and under the Allowed Apps section, highlight the area that begins with paste the AUMID and then just use Ctrl and V to paste the AUMID inside the quotation marks. You'll notice there's an attribute just to the right of the allowed app called rs5:auto launch with a value set to true. Setting this against your allowed app in the XML file will configure it to auto launch each time your Windows 11 thin client logs in as the auto logon user. If you don't want any of your allowed apps to auto launch, then just leave it out of the XML. It's also worth mentioning that you can only set one of your allowed apps to auto launch inside your kiosk. So if you place the auto launch attribute against more than one of your allowed apps inside the XML, then Intune will flag up an error and won't deploy it to your Windows 11 endpoints. Now we need to move down to the section marked Start Pins, highlight the area that begins with paste the AUMID, and just Ctrl and V to paste the AUMID inside the quotation marks again. Now let's take a look at the Win32 app. As we mentioned earlier in this video, the Win32 app we're going to add to the multi-app kiosk is going to be a Chrome browser. As a prerequisite to this demo, we downloaded and installed Chrome locally on the Tenzig device and already know where to find the .lnk and .exe files. Whilst we're still inside the PowerShell console, we're going to shell out to a DOS prompt and show you how to find these two locations. So we type in CMD and press enter, and you'll see a different prompt appear. Now to find the location of the Chrome exe file, type in dir space chrome.exe space /s and press enter. Now we're going to copy this full path location and then paste it into our XML template file. We need to paste it under the Allowed Apps element inside the quotes, where the line starts with Desktop App Path. Then we have to append the text /chrome.exe to the end of the path. Now to find the location of the Chrome LNK file, we're going to run a similar dir command. We type in dir star or asterisk chrome.lnk /s again and press enter. Now you'll see several locations for this link file. The one we're going to use is the first one in the list. So we highlight and copy the location and then paste it under the Start Pins element inside the quotes, where the line starts with Desktop App Link. Then we need to append the text /Google Chrome.lnk to the end of the path. Now we need to make a slight adjustment to this path to make it work on the Windows 11 client by making sure the path has double slashes instead of single ones. We only need to do this for any start pin links. Otherwise, the configuration policy won't be applied to the device. So just be aware of that. Now that we've added in our two applications, we'll just add the finishing touches to this XML before we build the Intune configuration policy. We mentioned earlier on in the video that we have the option to set the multi-app kiosk to automatically log on each time the endpoint is rebooted. This is handled by the element called Auto Logon Account and is also where we can add in our own friendly name that is displayed each time the user logs in. You can set this display name to be whatever you want just by changing the name inside the quotes. At the moment this is set to Kiosk Logon Display Name, so we'll change it to be Multi-App Kiosk User, just so it's more meaningful for this demonstration. One last thing we need to do before we save the changes is make sure that the GUID defined inside the profile ID at the top of the XML document and in the default profile ID at the bottom of the XML are the same. This way, the config for the auto logon account points to the profile above in the XML document. Now that we've completed all the necessary customizations, we just need to save the XML document, ready to build the Intune configuration policy to deploy to our Windows 11 IoT Tenzing device. Now this is where everything we've shown you so far in the video all comes together, and we build the config policy that will deploy our custom multi-app kiosk XML to the Tenzing Windows 11 endpoint. Inside the Intune portal, we need to select Devices, and then under the Manage Devices heading, select Configuration. Once inside the configuration window, click Create and select New Policy in the drop-down. Go to the platform drop-down and select Windows 10 and later from the list. Now, in the profile type below, select Templates and then click the custom profile name. Once that's done, click the Create button at the bottom of the screen. When the custom window is displayed, give the config policy a meaningful name and description. We're going to call this Windows 11 IoT Multi-App Kiosk. Then we're going to add some extra information into the description that describes what the policy actually does in more detail. Once we're happy with the basics, we click Next, and then inside the Configuration Settings section, click Add, and you'll see a list of options to build an OMA URI. OMA URIs are strings that point to specific configuration settings for Windows devices and are used to configure advanced device settings. Now, we're going to configure an AssignedAccess OMA URI that will use a configuration service provider, or CSP, on the Windows 11 thin client to modify the registry and build our multi-app kiosk as a result. Give the settings a name and then paste in the AssignedAccess OMA URI as shown here, including the period or full stop at the beginning of the URI. Click the data type drop-down and then select the type string XML file. Now we need to locate the XML config file that we created earlier called Windows 11 Multi-App Kiosk.xml. In the Custom XML section, click the Open File dialog, browse to the location of the XML file, mine is in C:\temp. Select this file and click Open. The contents of the XML file will appear in the Custom XML field on the form. At the bottom of the Add Row screen, click Save, and you'll see your OMA URI listed on screen. Click Next and Next, as we aren't going to use any scope tags here. On the Assignments section of the configuration policy, we click Add Groups and then type in the group name that our device belongs to. Our test device belongs to a group called Tenzing Devices. So in this example, we start typing in the name Tenzing Devices in the search field, and then, when the group is displayed, tick the box next to it and click Select. Make sure you know exactly which devices you intend to target here, as any devices in this group will put the thin client in kiosk mode. Always test any config changes on a sample of lab devices to be safe. Click Next and Next again, and you'll see a summary of the configuration policy that was just created. If you need to make any amendments to it before it's created, then you can just use the previous button to navigate back through the setup process and make any changes necessary. We're happy with this configuration, so we'll click Create, and you should see a notification message indicating that it was created successfully. If we click Refresh, then the new policy is displayed inside there. Now we'll get the thin client to sync with Intune to get its changes as soon as possible. So we go to Devices and select Windows under the By Platform heading. Click on our device, then click Sync in the top menu and answer yes to the sync question. If we go back and click Refresh, then we see that the client has recently checked in. Remember, this may take a couple of minutes, so be patient. Now that we've seen that the client has checked in, we can reboot the Tenzig device and see what's happened. Once the client has rebooted, notice that it automatically logs in with the new username multi-app kiosk user that we defined inside the XML config earlier. And if we wait a little longer, it launches the UWP Windows app that we also specified with the auto launch attribute in the allowed apps list. If we click on the Start menu, then you can see the Chrome app that we also configured inside our XML config file. Let's launch it to prove everything is working as expected. Now, if we take a look around the desktop, you can see that this device is running in a restricted kiosk mode and completely locked down. If we try to access certain Windows features, like sign-in options from the power button, or we try to adjust the date and time, we are greeted with the message, "This app has been blocked by your system administrator." This is because we only specified 2 allowed apps inside our config XML, the Windows app and Google Chrome. So this Windows 11 IoT Thin client is behaving exactly as we designed it to, which is great. Now, as we promised earlier, let's have a quick look inside the Windows app and sign in to one of our Entra resources. If I click Sign In, fill in my username and password, and click Sign In, and complete the MFA request on my mobile device, I'm presented with the Windows app, where I can get access to my desktops and apps within the portal. And if I click Connect on my Entra Join desktop and wait just a few moments, then I'm presented with the remote Windows 11 desktop inside the Entra ID environment. This concludes today's demonstration on creating a multi-app kiosk for your Windows 11 IoT Thin clients using Microsoft Intune. We showed you how to create an Intune application that deployed the latest Microsoft Windows app to the Tenzig Windows 11 endpoint. Then we showed you how to set up the previously mentioned Windows app and Google Chrome browser to build a multi-app kiosk XML file that would then be deployed via an Intune configuration policy to the Tenzig endpoint. Following that deployment, we showed you around the lockdown desktop on the client and then demonstrated a sign-in via the Windows app to gain access to the resources inside the Microsoft Entra ID. If you enjoyed the video and found the content helpful, please take a moment to like it and also subscribe to the Tenzig YouTube channel. Your support enables us to reach a wider audience and continue providing valuable information to the tech community. Remember, if you have any questions regarding this or related topics, then please contact your Tenzig team or visit the website at www.tenzig.com. From all of us here at Tenzig, thanks for watching and have a wonderful rest of your day.